And joining us live from COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Laura Young, an award-winning climate activist and environmental scientist. She campaigns on social media as Less Waste Laura. Please welcome them all to Debate Night. It's a greenwashing scam, you say. Let's cross now to Egypt. Laura Young, you were at COP here in Glasgow. You're there now, on the ground as a delegate there. Do you believe it's a greenwashing scam?
I believe it's definitely not perfect, and there's lots that we need to be doing to improve it. And I think especially in the last year, we've had lots of climate unravelling. We started talking about fracking, that came out of nowhere. We are discussing new oil fields, and I completely agree with everything that's just been said. But the one thing I would like to highlight is often when the question around why is COP happening, why is it important, is it just a greenwashing show, as this questioner has asked? The thing we need to ask ourselves is actually the opposite. If we didn't have it, what state would the world be in? And the Paris Agreement was the big place that countries started committing to these legally binding targets. And it says that actually if we didn't have this, there's been projections that show that instead of being 2.5 degrees of warming by the end of the century, we'd be on track for 3.6 degrees. Both are completely unacceptable. Both need to be brought down. But we need to at least acknowledge that actually we have seen warming or projections of warming come down because of the Paris Agreement, because of COPs, because we are holding countries accountable. It's not enough. We, of course, need to push further, but we need to have them. And just a final thought on this, though, is actually that COPs are quite special, although there are delegates that we may disagree being here. Actually, every country that attends get the same seat at the same table, and it's one of the only conferences that does this. So in among big players like the UK, the US, China, whoever you want to name, you've also got every single country that is currently vulnerable to climate change getting an opportunity to go up and have their world leaders speak, but also speak in negotiations. And that is something that is really unique about COP, and it's something that we do need to hold on to make sure that we aren't ignoring that. So It's not perfect. We need to work with it, but there has been progress since they have been initiated.
OK, let's jump back to Laura Young in Egypt. That is a criticism that is often made of these summits, is the lack of engagement from the biggest polluters, from India and China and other countries as well, who make a much bigger impact than we do, Laura. What would you say to that?
Well, I think we have to lead by example. You know, how are we ever going to influence the big players, as we are calling them, if we aren't getting our own house in order? We need to be putting up the finance, we need to be putting down our emissions, we need to be leading the way and having those discussions. And, you know, I think the fact that Rishi Sunak almost didn't even appear at this conference really shows how keen he was to be a global leader when it comes to this. And so I think it's important that we see our role is actually sitting at the table. But the one thing I just want for us all to keep in mind when we're having these conversations, whether it's about emissions reductions or whether it's about finance, where it goes, where we spend it, we need to keep in mind who we're talking about when we talk about the people who are impacted by climate change. Being over here at COP27, I bump into every single minute people who have come from Pakistan, the east of Africa, Nigeria, countries who are being impacted by climate change, and they have personal stories of how they are impacted. And Nicola Sturgeon, earlier on this week, met with some of my friends and old colleagues from an NGO called Tear Fund to hear their stories. And my friend Fred from Kenya was sharing about how that drought is impacting that community. That's who we're talking about when we talk about finance and money. And we need to be remembering that this is the part that we can play. And actually, what we need now is a domino effect. We've put up money as Scotland, but we haven't seen that domino effect even within the United Kingdom. So we need to be continually pushing from the world level leader, as well as from all of us having that influence on our local representatives.
OK, thanks, Laura. Laura Young, who's joining us tonight from COP in Egypt. On that subject of insulation of homes, do you think we need to learn faster from other countries and what they're doing, what you're hearing out there about what's taking place?
We do. I think the main thing, the theme that is coming out from these conversations is that we need to be more innovative with what we are doing. We need to trial new ways of getting people insulating their homes, being more energy efficient with the way that they operate. We need to be looking at this not just with our homes, we need to be looking at it with transport as well. You know, I know it's slightly going back to the previous question, but why aren't we trying new things, new ways to get people using public transport? Germany had a €9 a month ticket that they trialled to see how that could get people out of their cars. Why aren't we doing more of these innovative solutions? And actually, integrated ticketing is something that we could do. It's something that we did do. We did it at COP26 and it worked great. And so we need to be doing that. So we need to be thinking innovatively about how can we manage this? And a stat that actually just came out today from the UK Climate Change Committee is that 60% of the homes in the UK, so it's a UK stat, can be put into energy efficiency in line with net zero for around £1,100. So we need to be thinking about this relatively small investment that can make massive savings and help us with the cost of living and the climate crisis, how we can be putting this in. And so that's the challenge that we need to be looking at. And we need the Scottish Government to have innovative ways that we can do this as individuals in homes, whether that's a home, a semi-detached home, a flat, no matter what property we live in.
Thanks, Laura.